Welcome to episode 18 of the Perrysburg Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Newlove. The Perrysburg Podcast is an informational podcast for prospective, new, and current Perrysburg, Ohio residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. You can find the show notes for this episode on perrysburgpodcast.com. Today, we're talking about the Norma Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth. Norma Stark, then Mrs. Clulow, was my band teacher in elementary school. I learned how to play saxophone in the 5th and 6th grade in her class. In this podcast episode, I refer to her as my music teacher, but you know what I mean. She was my band teacher, and she taught me how to play music. When I moved to Perrysburg back in 2007, I ran into Mrs. Stark every once in a great while. Two gals who live in the same small town tend to do that, and she always remembered me. She had a great memory. I believe that Mrs. Stark was also the music director at my grandma and grandpa Lehman's church in Bowling Green, Ohio for some time too. Our paths crossed many times from 1988 until 2011. I was 10 when we met, and I was turning, I think, 33 around the time of her death in 2011. Yeah, I was just about to turn 33. She was enormously gifted as a teacher, a musician, and a leader. I was sad when my mom forwarded her obituary to me via email in June of 2011. I still can't bring myself to delete that email from my mom, even though the obituary is out there on the internet. There's a link to that obituary in the show notes for this episode 18 of the Perrysburg Podcast. Just look on perrysburgpodcast.com, click on episode 18. There is a saying in my part of the world, here in Ohio, that goes, as long as someone remembers your name, you're not truly gone. And I believe that. I say Norma Stark's name a lot in this episode, and I remember her fondly. I'm putting this podcast episode out into the world with gratitude and remembrance for her impact on my life. And I welcome anyone who listens to this to learn about her garden and labyrinth, learn about Norma Stark, and say the names of those you remember so that they are not truly gone either. As long as someone remembers your name, you are not truly gone. And Mom, if you are listening to this, I may be 45 years old, but I still like it when you tell me who died without my realizing it. I know you care that I know these things, and thank you. I do the same thing for my son Derek, who's off at college in Cincinnati too. It's a mom thing. You're doing it right. All right. I put this short backstory in this episode in case you know me from my Pemberville days or as an Eastwood High School graduate and band member. I am trying to get the word out about the garden and labyrinth so that if Norma Stark made an impact in your life, you can stop by her garden and labyrinth to enjoy the legacy she left behind. In case you can't visit because you're far away, by the way, like my sister who's in grad school in Germany right now, check out the YouTube video for this episode. In the YouTube video, there are pictures of the garden and labyrinth. I should have thought to take more pictures in the spring and summer. However, I didn't even start this podcast until July 2nd, and I didn't think to do this episode until the fall. So many of the pictures you will see in the YouTube video are from October and November when the leaves are falling and, things are not exactly green and blooming. Done is better than perfect in my world, and I hope you enjoy my pictures. Go to youtube.com/@Perrysburg Podcast and click on the video for episode 18. There's a link to the YouTube video in the description for this episode on your podcast player, and you can also find it on perrysburgpodcast.com. 3 different ways to find it. Go to youtube.com/@Perrysburg Podcast, or click on the link in the description, or click on the link on perrysburgpodcast.com. One last thing before I introduce my guest, Mrs. Alice Buehrle. The foundation that maintains Norma Stark's Memory Garden and Labyrinth is looking for a new board member. If you're interested, please contact my guest, Alice Buehrle. Her contact information is in the episode description on your podcast player and also in the show notes on the website, perrysburgpodcast.com. Now, I didn't know much about the Norma Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth until 2018. That was when I visited with some women from my church. My church is Lutheran Church of the Master in Perrysburg, Ohio. You can find that at 28744 Simmons Road, Perrysburg. To help me learn more about the garden and labyrinth for this podcast episode, I reached out to Alice Buehrle. Alice is the founder of the Norma Swaisgood Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth Foundation and president of the board. The board ensures that Norma's wishes and dreams for the garden and labyrinth continue on in Perrysburg, Ohio. In this episode, we talk about where the garden and labyrinth is located, where to park, hours of operation, how the garden and labyrinth got its name and who Norma Stark was, some information about the foundation and board that maintains the garden and labyrinth, what the labyrinth looks like and the best way to experience it, people and groups who have visited the memory garden and labyrinth, how to schedule a group tour, why people visit, how to use the house as a meeting site, and how to donate to the foundation. Although visiting the garden and labyrinth is free, you're welcome to support the foundation that maintains the garden and labyrinth. Without further ado, here's my interview with Alice Buehrle. Hi, Alice. Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast. Good to have you with me today.
Oh, Kim, I'm just so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We are talking about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart because my music teacher in elementary school was Norma Clulow, who became Norma Stark. And now she is deceased, but she left behind a legacy. She left behind the Norma Stark Garden and Labyrinth. And we're going to talk about that today. I'm so excited to have you with me. Alice, what is your role with the Garden and Labyrinth?
I am the founder of the foundation, and I'm the president of our board. I make sure Norma's wishes and dreams for the garden and labyrinth continue on in Perrysburg. And hopefully I'm living up to her wishes and her vision and mission for the garden and labyrinth. And she saw it as a place for peace, for healing, for being a part of the community of where you can go and just relax and think and regenerate and rejuvenate yourself. One person did that, Norma, and now we have a board of 7 trying to fill her shoes and keep her legacy going.
That sounds about right. She was a busybody. I mean, like in a good way. She was always enthusiastic about anything and everything that she did. And even though I kind of lost touch with her because I moved to Perrysburg and I had my own family and a job and all the things, I knew that she was always busy with something. And my mom would send me a newspaper article that featured her. And yeah.
And she would remember you and your name and would remember everything about you. I was always amazed. You could bump into anyone and she'd know their name right off. And it had been years and years before. She hadn't seen them in forever. And they weren't always her students. They were just people that she was, I don't know, proud that, because I would say, how do you remember everyone's name? And that was just something she did and was very good at and always tried to bring out the best in everyone. Even if you didn't see it in yourself, she would see something in you and made sure that you used the gifts and talent you were given. That was her gift and talent. Yeah.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I remember times when I was doing a solo for a contest and she was accompanying me on a piano and she would have her hands poised over those keys and she would look at me like, I know you can do this. Now you've got to show me that you can. She was awesome.
Yes. You talked about how you knew Norma and I knew Norma because I taught with her in the Rossford schools and I knew her as both Mrs. Clulow and Mrs. Stark. And she was just amazing. She was our elementary music teacher, and she always brought the teachers into the classroom. We did Orff and we learned Orff. And she took me, I remember in 1982, I went with her for 6 weeks to Europe. And I knew nothing really about music. And I went with her to the Mozarteum art school, music art school in Salzburg. And we're with all these music teachers. And I was the only elementary non-music teacher. They all welcomed me and I was their student. So if I could learn it, they figured their students could learn it. They used me as their student every day. And it was just wonderful. It was an amazing opportunity that she presented me. And she saw how much I enjoyed watching her with the students. So she was going to go. I thought I was just going to go with her, but not do her schooling with her. When we got there, she goes, "Oh no, you're going with me every day." I did. I might have taken some different class. I didn't take the higher level things. I usually went into the dance class because I could move. So it was an amazing experience. And that's what she did for her teachers, let alone her students at Rossford schools too. She's an amazing lady.
Thank you for sharing that. As a Eastwood student, I didn't know where she had come from before she came to us. When you're, how
Yeah.
old was I? I was a fifth grader or something when I met her.
Mhm.
When you're 10, you don't care where somebody came from. You just care that they're there,
Yes, yes,
then. But
yes.
as I've gotten older, I've learned things about her. Like she used to be at Rossford schools and she knew a lot of
Mhm.
people who cared enough about her to join this board and carry on this
Oh,
legacy of the
for
garden
sure.
and labyrinth.
We didn't want her to leave. And really, we knew what we had. And it was Eastwood was so blessed to be receiving her. And the only reason she decided to leave was she had some, truthfully, professional disagreements with the superintendent on how to run a music program and what she expected and how she wanted it to be run. And they had some disagreements, and she just thought it was best because she couldn't work under those circumstances, not giving her students and the teachers the best. So she went to Eastwood, and we never lost touch because she's just such a wonderful. We stayed in touch the whole time until her death in 2011.
Creative differences do drive wedges
Mhm,
between people. I get
mhm,
it. But your
mhm.
loss there at Rossford Schools was our gain at Eastwood for
We all
sure.
knew that. Every teacher knew that. We tried to keep her. And even when those people who she had differences with left the district, we tried to get her away from Eastwood, but she was so entrenched in Eastwood and loved everything there. She was not about to come back. She loved it there and her band and everything like that. So, but she did help. She continued to help the Rossford teachers and the Rossford students she knew on her own. She continued to be a part of Rossford schools and I should say the Rossford community, let alone Perrysburg community.
Yep. Well, and she left behind this garden and labyrinth here in
She
Perrysburg.
did.
Yeah,
She
let's talk about
did.
the garden and labyrinth. Where is it located for anybody listening?
Yeah, it's at 345 West South Boundary, which is right at the corner of West South Boundary and Pine, across from Frank's School. It is in a residential area, and a lot of people will just go past because they don't think, it's not at a house, but it is. And you can park right across the street when school's not in session, but wherever you can, but also in the driveway. And there are signs there, and you just park your car and go around to the left of the house. You will see a walkway and go back to the garden through a gate. It's just amazing what that compact little labyrinthine garden, the peace when you walk back there, it brings. We as a board hopefully are trying to carry out Norma's wishes that it be a place for peace and a healing, and that it's always free and always open to the public. Well, Norma had it open 24 hours. I'm afraid with our insurance, we can only have it open from dawn to dusk. If we do want anything after hours, one of the board members needs to be there. We've had things in the evening, but a board member then at that time always needs to be present. The garden otherwise is always open and you can stop in any time you wish to visit. If you would like someone to be there from the board, you can visit our website, or I will leave at the end a number that you could call to reach me if you want a big group. Even if you don't want a big group, one of the board members is always willing to come there and share what we know. But there is information there right on the patio. If you go around, as you come around, you'll see a mailbox sitting on the patio, and open the mailbox and we ask for your comments and things so we know how to improve it. If there's anything you see what we need to improve, we're trying to keep it with as Norma had it, but we've realized since we were established, and also in 2011, Norma died, passed in June, and we were established. We got it all going in, we were October 13th of 2011 is the foundation's date that it was established. And Norma had funds put aside with Toledo Community Foundation to help us to continue as much as we can into perpetuity in some form, a garden and labyrinth in the Swaisgood family name. And Swaisgood is her maiden name. And it was the garden and labyrinth was established in honor of her mother, Annabelle Swaisgood, and her father, Norm Swaisgood. And she was an only child and loved her parents dearly. She wanted to do something to honor them and use the funds that they had provided her with to share with the whole community. And this is what she came up with. It's a beautiful tribute to the Swaisgood family. The foundation is trying to do the best we can to keep her wishes going. We hopefully people just come, as I said, and just use it and feel free. We have people who come and bring their lunch. Sometimes the mailman will sit in the back and have us lunch when it's nice, or somebody walking through will just stop and eat their lunch on the patio because it's so calm. And even if you choose not to walk a labyrinth, it's just a peaceful setting in the city.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I learned something there too. That was good, even though I've been there a couple of times. Alice, the name of the labyrinth and garden officially is the Norma Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth. How did it get that name?
Well, she called it the Memory Garden and Labyrinth, meaning Norma just called it the Memory Garden and Labyrinth. After she passed, I said, how are we going to do this? How? I didn't know where to go, what to do. And I thought, well, I guess I start with an attorney. I don't know how to start a nonprofit. I don't know what to do. Other than I knew monies were there. So truthfully, to be fair, I started with Toledo Community Foundation and said, what do I do? Well, you need to start a foundation. I said, okay. And they said we would need an attorney to do that. So got an attorney and he walked through the process and he said, you need to get a board. So I called right away. I knew who would be on the board and they all said yes, of course. The name came about because at Toledo Community Foundation, it was the Swaisgood Memory Garden and Labyrinth Foundation. But we, meaning the board, we wanted Norma to be a part of it. And the attorney suggested, since her name was Stark, that we have our foundation under that name and the foundation under the Toledo Community Foundation stay as Swaisgood. So I said, well, we need more than just Stark. It really is the Norma Swaisgood Stark Memory Garden and Foundation. But that's a mouthful to say always. The Norma Swaisgood Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth Foundation. That's meaning the foundation's name, but we just like to call it the Memory Garden and Labyrinth. And that's kind of what we call it. Usually we just call it Norma's Garden and Labyrinth to honor her. And some people just call it the garden. So it has all different kind of names, but our legal name as a foundation is the Norma Swaisgood Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth Foundation. But I think most people find us if they just Google even Norma's Labyrinth, it comes up. So that's kind of a little bit of the background on how the name came about.
Thank you for explaining that. It is a mouthful.
It is.
I have the materials that were referring to
Yes,
from
yes.
the mailbox.
Yes, and that's the mailbox materials. Yes,
Yep.
we think it's enough to give people help, but everything and I can only ask of the board. I mean, we've been a board. All our members on the board are up there in age, and it's hard to get younger people. We've had younger people on the board, but I think they've just come to see what we're about, or they had to do maybe a project and do some volunteer work. So they'd be around for a little bit, which is a good thing. But, to carry on something and to do volunteer work for that amount of time for some people with children and families. So I always, say I am grateful that I retired. I was retired when this came. I retired in 2010. So I was able to take care of Norma during that year of her illness till she died in 2011, helped Jim take care of Norma when she passed. And I was retired, so was able to do what was necessary to start the foundation at that time. And then I was only doing part-time, subbing and teaching. So that gave me the opportunity to begin with the foundation with the help of all the other ladies on the board. Our other ladies are all, we have two teachers, one educator, another educator, a principal. We knew we needed someone in business, so we found a business woman, and then we also needed a much more master gardener than I was and the other ladies were. So we found an excellent master gardener. And can I go ahead and tell you their names because they deserve a lot of credit?
Yes, ma'am. You go right ahead.
Mona Maxey is on our board. She's the master gardener. We have Rebecca Jessing, who used to own, I don't know if you knew, but Clara J's tea room. And she is our business lady. She has that background knowledge in business, which really helps, even though we're a nonprofit. It is still a business. And then we have Norma's principal from Eastwood Schools, Sue Wynn. It's a wonderful lady. And then we have two other Rossford teachers, Kathy Kasperzak, who is our secretary on the board, and Lorraine Caserta, who is our treasurer on the board. As you can see with the diversity, they're all friends of Norma's, but we are trying our best to keep it going. Our goal as a board is Norma did this all on her own, and there are always people there, and she's all involved. But we're trying to not only make it people who knew Norma, but we're trying to reach out to people who didn't know Norma. We want a group of people to get to know the Garden Labyrinth who didn't know Norma. And that's just kind of happening within the last few years. We're getting a lot of people who didn't know Norma, which we're really looking forward to, having more people come and say, no, I didn't know Norma, but I'm so glad, that this Garden and Labyrinth is here.
I hope this podcast episode helps.
That's what we're trying to do. That's one of our goals, meaning the foundation recent goals. How do we get more people who, not only in the Perrysburg area, but what can we do to reach out to let people know we're here and come visit and just enjoy the Garden and Labyrinth? And if we can do anything to introduce you to the Labyrinth, if you don't know what a labyrinth is, could we introduce you or talk to you about labyrinths? And again, there are some people who are not interested in labyrinth, but we do have a garden with wonderful things. You could just come and relax the garden. But walking the labyrinth is truly, for me, revitalizing. And I give all that credit to Norma because I knew what a labyrinth was, but I really didn't know about labyrinths and didn't really want to that much. But now, due to Norma, I went and became a labyrinth facilitator.
Well, let's talk about what a typical visit is like. So, for anybody who has never been to a labyrinth, what does it look like and how does one walk a labyrinth?
I think I want the main thing that people to know that it is not a maze. It is not meant to trick you. There's only one way in and one way out. And you start at the entrance to the labyrinth. Norma's labyrinth, our foundation labyrinth now, is a 9-circuit labyrinth. There are 3 main types of labyrinth: the classical labyrinth, the Chartres labyrinth, and then modern labyrinths. Ours is the Chartres labyrinth, based on the labyrinth found in Chartres Cathedral in France. And that is a 13 circuit. That means 13 rounds, 13 unicircular, meaning continuous circular around. Ours is a 9 circular, modeled after the Chartres labyrinth. As I said, there's no right or wrong way to walk a labyrinth. I just like to say there's a respectful way. I mean, we have little ones come and just run the labyrinth, which is just fine. That's where they're at. And they enjoy it, and we don't stop them from doing that. We just ask that you don't really take food or liquid on the labyrinth. There's a little bench there. You can leave your food or liquid right there on the bench before you go into the labyrinth. And you just start. Some people set intentions for their walk. It could just be, my intention is to walk this labyrinth. I've never walked one before. Or your intention could be you're thinking of someone and you have them on your heart and you want to share this labyrinth walk with them or for them. It could be just to enjoy the day, or you may have a problem and you may need some thoughts. We have some stones at the beginning of the labyrinth. I usually they have words on them. I will pick one up and not look at it till I get to the center of the labyrinth. You can walk at your own pace. And if I'm looking at, from me, how I walk the labyrinth when I start, it might take me 15 minutes to walk in, because I'll stop along the path, maybe say a prayer or maybe have a thought. When I get to the center of the labyrinth, which in our case is a nautilus, and Norma chose the nautilus for the center of her labyrinth because of the chambers, and the nautilus had 13. Our nautilus has 13 chambers in it, and the Chartres labyrinth, truthfully, our labyrinth would really be called a modern labyrinth, not a Chartres labyrinth, because we, meaning Norma, changed the center. Once you do anything on a labyrinth to change it, it becomes a modern labyrinth. We still call it a Chartres labyrinth because it truly looks like a Chartres labyrinth, except for the center. In the true Chartres labyrinth, they have a 6-petal rose. Norma took the 6-petal rose and put her spin on it and put the sacred nautilus with the chambers in it. That's in our center. And you can spend as much time as you want in the center. You can stand in the center. You could sit in the center. You just walk in the center. And then when you're ready to leave, you walk back out the exact same way you came into the labyrinth. Again, no tricks. You do have to focus. You have to focus on the path. And that's the idea, to focus, to calm down and only be thinking of the now and what is happening in the now and on the labyrinth. And then you leave the labyrinth. Hopefully you've gained some insight, maybe at the center of the labyrinth, maybe not. That's okay too. You come back out and you go back into the world, and hopefully you're calmer, you're more reflective. And if not, sometimes it might take several walks, and sometimes nothing happens in the labyrinth for you. It's just a walk, and you just want to walk the labyrinth. So each walk is different. And again, no wrong or right way, just, I would say, a respectful way. And the little ones, obviously, we let them run the labyrinth and they have a good time.
Absolutely. I went to the labyrinth many times, probably 3 or 4 times. And the first time I ever went was a group outing with the ladies from my church. Can you talk a little bit about what happens when you have a group at the labyrinth?
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's a totally different experience. The first time I had was not on our labyrinth, was on a different labyrinth. And I found it not comforting at all. There were so many people on it. And I think that was it. I think it needed to be set up properly and let people know it's okay to pass people on a labyrinth when you have a group labyrinth. You don't need to stay behind them. I didn't feel that I could pass someone coming or going on the labyrinth, which you can. You just step aside and go around them. You can acknowledge them or not on the path. Also, you wait about 20 seconds, 25 seconds before sending the next person on the labyrinth. Leave a little space. Again, if you're walking faster, you don't need to slow down unless you choose to. Again, you can pass that person. You can also wait if you don't like. Some people do not in group, do not want to pass someone else. So you just slow down or wait at one of the curves. And the size of the labyrinth, I think, does dictate how many people you can have in your group walk. Though I've seen a group walk, I have not been in it, where everyone held hands and walked that way. It's just, again, no wrong or right way, just a respectful way, and kind of what works for your group and what your group is looking to get out of it. That's why you set an intention and think about it beforehand. It's different than if you're walking alone, I think. And how did you find going to ask you a question now, turn the tables. How did you find your group walk?
I liked it because it was my first time ever there. I can't remember if you were the facilitator there with our group. I can't remember. It might have been you. But anyways, it was only a small group, maybe 8 people.
Okay.
And let's assume it was you.
Okay. I remember because I'm thinking unless you brought your own facilitator.
No.
I wouldn't think so. It would have to have been me. Well, I'm glad, because sometimes I think I was probably just learning how to do group facilitations then.
I'm pretty sure it was in 2017, I want to say. But I remember we did wait maybe 30 seconds before the next person went and the next person. And we were trying to follow the path. And I remember looking down a lot and trying not to screw it up.
and you do sometimes because it's hard. And our labyrinth is a little bit faded. So you really need to look at the shapes and stay.
There are stones.
Correct. It's a pavers. The wide pavers are what you stay on, and it's outlined by the rectangular small pavers. And that's what I tell someone. Before, when Norma was first, it was the color because they were so distinct. But with the sun fading it, now you really need to look at the shapes to stay on the path. So,
okay.
And I'm sorry, I kind of interrupted you on what you were saying about your walk.
No problem. As we walked in that staggered fashion, I remember focusing on where I was walking. So I made sure that I followed the path, and we each had a stone, which you talked about earlier. And I don't remember what I was thinking about so much as just enjoying being there with the group. It was, just the girls from the church, and we wanted to do something together. We had an interim pastor at the time. She was with us. And she was fostering a baby who was strapped to her chest. Can't remember if it was a baby boy or a baby girl. She was the baby was part of the group. And as we went along, we were mindful of one another, brushing shoulders and whatnot, respectful, quiet. And I was thinking to myself, wow, my music teacher from elementary school built this. This is really cool, because that was my first time there. I thought it was really cool.
That just makes me so pleased. It's just exciting. I've only had one, which I never thought of before. So I will let people know this in case they have. There was one lady who had inner ear issues. And she said, she looked at the labyrinth and she said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. It's the motion of going back and forth to her she thought it would be a problem for her. I want to call it motion sickness, whatever it is. She had motion issues, but she did walk into it very slowly. So I guess I've learned something, that maybe for some people with motion issues, they might have an issue walking it, though she did walk the whole labyrinth and it didn't seem to cause her a problem. But I'm always cognizant of that now when people come to the labyrinth, because I would have never thought of that type of movement might not be best but there are other kind of labyrinths than maybe this labyrinth, the Chartres labyrinth, with a lot of turns and a lot of going into the center, coming back out to the center, might not be the type of labyrinth for you, but there are classical labyrinths or some modern labyrinths that might be better for you.
But there's only one labyrinth in Perrysburg, and this is
Only
it.
one. Only one. There is a finger labyrinth, though, if it's still there, I haven't visited, at Zor Church on a big, huge rock at the back. I just happened to be walking and I turned and looked and I thought, that's a labyrinth on that stone. And it's a finger labyrinth, which we do use for some of our handicapped people who prefer not to walk it. We have finger labyrinths that they can walk, and we use those. And for some of the children with sensory concerns or something, we have a finger labyrinth with sand on them. That seems to calm them, and they really, really enjoy that. There are a lot of different kind of labyrinths, but as I said, some churches way back in medieval times, before you went in, right at the entrance to the church, to kind of calm people down, there would be a finger labyrinth that they would use to calm their mind and set their spirit for now what they were going to go into, a place of peace and reflectiveness. Hopefully that's what Norma's labyrinth and our labyrinth brings, peace and reflectiveness on some level.
I think it's a good place to think about something serious, not serious bad, but something that's important. That's the better word, important. I ended up taking this pastor who was considering a call to our church to the labyrinth to kind of consider his call. I walked the labyrinth as well, just as something that we could do together, but yet separate, and consider each other. Like, is this person right for our church? And I want him to think, is he right for us? And he ended up accepting the call. Now, I'm not going to say that it works for everybody, but it was a cool experience.
But again, your intention, and maybe again, you're reflecting and really thinking about something and focusing on. And I guess a problem is that when I have little dilemmas, little issues that I want, sometimes I'll just stop there. I'm only going there to check it out, to make sure everything's okay. And it's like, it draws me in. Okay, I'm going to walk. And then sometimes I think, oh, okay, I'm going to walk in, but I'm not going to walk out. And I guess I should say, some people say, well, do I have to walk back out? Well, no. I mean, if you just want to walk out, most people don't remember this, but if you choose not to walk back out the labyrinth once you're in the center, you should really, it's called the back door of the labyrinth. You should go out the other way. Don't come in from the entrance unless you walk out. People who walk the labyrinth a lot would probably know that. Go into the labyrinth. I really don't have time to walk back out. I just came to do this. And you go out the other way. Instead of the entrance, you go out the other end of the labyrinth. But I'm not a stickler for that. Again, no wrong or right way. If you choose, you don't want to walk back out time or whatever, then just respectfully walk back out. And you don't have to take the path again. But that's part of the experience. So I would hope you would walk the path back out, because you're kind of reflecting on maybe what you were feeling or what you were thinking while you were in the center of the labyrinth. And hopefully you glean some insight into, as you put it, a problem or a thought or something you're working on. Again, if that's not your intention, you just want to walk the labyrinth, well then just walk the labyrinth.
Even though there's no right or wrong way to do it, best practices are always very good. It's good to learn what's the best practice, what's the best way to do that. And I think that's why you have those materials in the mailbox too. You talk about the stages of the walk, the purpose of the walk. There's all kinds of information that's in that mailbox, which is great. So if you want to experience it as an individual, you can. You don't need a facilitator such as yourself, Alice. But for anybody who's interested in bringing a group there, small or large, 2 people or 12, what do you recommend for a group booking that?
We have a website, the Norma Stark Labyrinth.com. And you will get information there. It'll give you some information about what we consider a group walk. And that's just, if you're just coming with 3 or 4 people, of course, we just like to know if there's a larger group coming. We just like to help you with parking and things like that, and tell you that truthfully, the best time for a larger group, if you have lots of cars, would be when the school is not in session, because then you can park across the street, which is easier. And obviously in the summer, anytime. But we do have groups when the schools are in session. We just say, can you double up? And it's just due to the parking is not that easy when the school is in session, even though there is side street parking and things like that. And we've had people park around in the back of the school even, but I really don't like using the school parking lot at all when the school is in session. It'd be long, but they're fine when it's not in session for us to use any of that. So that's part of it. But also a phone number. There is a phone number on the website, but that will be changing. And should I give that phone number now? That's the best way to reach me if you'd like to reach me, or is that okay?
Yes.
The best number to reach me at is 419-410-2496. There is another number on the website, which is the Labyrinth phone, but that is not always a board member. That may, their turn to carry it may not always be carrying it or something like that. So it's just best to reach me at the number. Again, 419-410-2496. And I will get back to you and help you in any way I can if you want to talk. Our board members do go out and give talks to different groups. We have all kinds of visitors. We have artist groups. We have church groups. We have cancer survivor groups. We have Bittersweet Farms. Their bus of people with autism come out. All kinds of things. We've had on the Labyrinth. Norma had 2 weddings on the Labyrinth, small weddings. We've had anniversary renewals and anniversaries. We've had a retirement celebration on the Labyrinth. We've had, there's a little bridge there. We've had, what is it, when the brownies cross over to Girl Scouts or whatever. They did that on the Labyrinth. We've had some school groups, but that was usually just across the street. They come over and they maybe not studying the Labyrinth was studying the garden. There's also, which I guess I didn't mention, there's a Zen garden there, and there are rakes and things that you can use in the Zen garden. The little ones seem to gravitate toward the Zen garden. They can get in there and rake that gravel, and they seem to love it. They make all kinds of pictures and things, but I find that very calming to use sometimes too. Again, the Labyrinth and the garden are meditative and calming tools. A way to calm yourself, a way to reflect on things, maybe get some insight in some issues, problems, or concerns you may have, or just go and sit and have lunch on the patio and just enjoy it's very peaceful. You wouldn't think it would be for all the traffic out front, but Norma had planned it very well, so it's well buffered by the trees that are out front. So the noise is very minimal back there.
It feels private back there. It does, for sure. I know, Alice, that you mentioned that there is no cost to visit the Garden and Labyrinth.
Never.
Right? Thank you very much. But is there anything that people who want to support the Garden and Labyrinth can do? Any way to donate to it?
Well, in our little mailbox, we do have envelopes, and there is also on the website a way to donate. And some people will donate to Toledo Community Foundation in the Labyrinth's name, but also they give checks directly to the foundation, which is in that. And it's just the Norma Stark Labyrinth and Garden Foundation. And we use any of that money to maintain the garden. None of the board members are paid. Now that the garden is so big, we do hire people to help us maintain it. We're all a little bit older and have our own garden. So we do have people help us to maintain the Garden and Labyrinth. And the foundation also owns and people always ask about the house. The foundation owns the house. Even though Mr. Stark still lives there part of the time, he does not care if anyone comes out. And sometimes he will even come out and greet you and ask you if you knew Norma. He is more than happy. He's not usually there. He lives part of the time in Florida, but there's always someone around at the house. We do take care of the house, and we have people who have used the house. We had meetings in the house. So I guess I didn't even mention, we just started doing this. If you need a place to hold a meeting or something, we We had some little educational groups use the house for different things. So if you need a place to hold a little meeting, more than welcome to contact me about that, using the house as a meeting place. And we also, which I didn't mention, now have a connection with the Greece Center in Perrysburg, the Monarch Greece Center in Perrysburg. So they'll be using our house at some point to hold some of their meetings or have some of their group counseling sessions there too. So if if you think you need a little place to have a meeting, we'd be more than happy to try to accommodate you in some way.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I had no idea
It's just
that was
starting.
a compliment to the Garden and
Yes, and
Labyrinth.
we like to do it mostly in the winter months. It's just easier, and when things aren't so much, because we want people really in the Garden Labyrinth. But if you need the house, we can accommodate. And we do have we every year, which I want to mention, every June we have Celebrate the Garden and Labyrinth, and that is just from this year. The Celebrate the Garden and Labyrinth is June. And I'm just checking to make sure I have the right date. I believe on 24, we have our date set as June, which is a Sunday, June 23rd. Celebrate the Garden Labyrinth from 3 to 5. And we have music, and we have light beverages. We talk about the labyrinth. We ask questions. We hand out information. Also, Monarch Greece Center may be there. Some of their information might go out then too, but we've been doing Celebrate the Garden Labyrinth. That's our big event each year, where we like to try to get out the word about the labyrinth.
I like that you're celebrating milestones. You have an annual celebration.
Yes, we do.
That's awesome.
Yep, we do.
Yeah, you just might see me there.
Hopefully, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm usually around in the summers. I will be making a YouTube video out of this, and I would love to share some of the pictures that I have taken of the Garden and Labyrinth.
Okay.
If you are listening to this, check out the YouTube video. Now, as we start to wrap this up, Alice, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Just please come and visit the Garden and Labyrinth. Take the time to walk and reflect. Slow down, as Norma would say, and enjoy what's around you. You don't need to go far in your own community. You have lovely, and I'm sure in your own backyards too, just to enjoy what's in your own community. One of our foundation goals is to try to get new people who don't know about the Garden Labyrinth. And that's why we're so excited that Kim is doing this and helping us get the word out to the Perrysburg community about the Garden and Labyrinth.
Thank you so much for being with me here on the Perrysburg Podcast to share about the Norma Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth. I will be a frequent visitor.
Thank you, Kim.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Kim.
Yep, my pleasure. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to episode 18 of the Perrysburg Podcast. I'd like to share a few comments, and then we'll wrap this up. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Norma Stark helped me feel joy. The joy of making music in my elementary school band class. And because I was in band, I made lifelong friends and had some amazing experiences, like marching in a parade at Disney World when I was 15. That was 30 years ago, but I still remember it. I went to band camp. I marched in high school football games. And just this summer, I went to a band reunion. Now that I'm in my mid-40s, we can look back. And Norma Stark also believed in me when she accompanied me during solos. She was on the piano, I was on my alto saxophone, and I felt supported and encouraged, and I learned a lot as her student. I also felt remembered later in life when she saw me in Perrysburg and remembered my name. Maya Angelou is right. I never forgot how Norma Stark, formerly Mrs. Clulow, made me feel. If you knew Norma Stark, please stop by her garden and Labyrinth in Perrysburg, Ohio. Write a message in that notebook in the mailbox on the backyard patio. Let Alice and the foundation board know that you were there and who Norma was to you. Sometimes we don't realize the impact that people have on us until they're gone. Write something down, share your thoughts with others. I mentioned a minute ago that we had a band reunion. It was an Eastwood High School band reunion. It was this summer, summer 2023. We didn't talk about our band teachers, but we would not have been able to have that reunion without them. I played the saxophone and the tuba. I went to band camp. I was in the marching band. I marched in parades, and I made my parents proud, thanks in part to Norma Stark. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Stark. And thank you, Mom and Dad, for buying that saxophone. I had a lot of fun playing it. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the Norma Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth in Perrysburg, Ohio. If you know someone who needs to hear this episode, either because they knew Norma Stark or because they might like to visit the garden and labyrinth, please share this episode with them. You can visit perrysburgpodcast.com to read the show notes. In the show notes, you'll find the address and website for the Norma Stark Memory Garden and Labyrinth, Alice Buehrle's contact information, just in case you're interested in joining the board for the foundation, a link to the YouTube video for this episode, and more. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks for listening today. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you next week. All right, this is a little bonus at the end. This is me getting emotional after finally recording everything. This was not easy for me to create this episode. Norma Stark meant something to me. She really did. And I do remember her fondly. But if I start blabbering while I'm recording, you can't hear what I'm saying. So I really steeled myself to create the intro and the outro for this episode. But now that it's over, I can cry because this woman meant a lot to me. And I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode. Thank you. Take care.